What is up, MMA true believers? I'm Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com. Tonight, I'm joined by a man who has been one of the best welterweights to ever do it for the last 2 decades. Not 1 decade, 2 decades. On September 12th, he returned to the cage at Bellator 246 for his 43rd fight and to face off with a Gracie, no less. And that man is the one and only Jon Fitch. Mr. Fitch, thanks for the time to talk. You returned to the cage after a year and a half.
Yeah, I'm kind of coming out of retirement, kind of. I was mentally retired after that fight.
I mean, I'm glad to see you back. I think most of us can say we're happy to see you back because when this fight was made, I loved it. Not just because I've interviewed you both and like the people you are, but the matchup is so fun from a grappling perspective. That said, Neiman still only has 10 fights as a professional. You have to go all the way back to New Year's Eve of 2011 when you fought an 11-1 Johnny Hendricks to find a similar experience gap between you and an opponent. Were you surprised by the booking or does it make a lot of sense because everyone totally knows it's heading to the mat at some point and you both have a lifetime of grappling experience. So in that level, it's kind of actually a fair matchup.
No, it's good. I mean, it's just where the sport, or the pseudo-sport is right now because no, we don't have a rigorous amateur vetting system. We don't have a way to like make sure that, you know, guys are on the same fight amounts or the same place.
Yeah.
And there's a number of reasons for that. I think in the structure of how the pseudo-sport is set up. And I mean, it's just kind of what you have to do because we are more pro wrestling than we are a sport.
Mm-hmm.
But the tough fighter, it's a good fight. It's a good matchup. And, you know, I started fighting so long ago that I've got a lot of fights.
When scouting Neiman and watching his fights in the past, maybe, what do you feel make him a very gifted grappler you have to be careful with? And on the flip side, where do you feel his grappling has some weaknesses and maybe those things get overlooked because of the hype behind that family name?
Well, I think he has a double-edged sword in that his grappling style is his asset and his liability. He has a little bit more of a traditional positional pin advance, work your way to the back submission type of game. And it's not a bad game, but it's defeatable. And if you are able to do a lot of damage in the ground and pound and the close clinches and stuff like that, like it can be a big liability because you're not getting a lot of work done. You're not doing a lot of damage. And if he's not damaging me, I'm in the fight. I'm always in the fight.
Yeah.
I'm working. So, you know, it's kind of like a very similar Jake Shields type of situation where Jake is positionally fantastic. But if you know how to stay away from the positions, you know how to keep away from him getting those subs, you know, you can defeat him by staying on top, doing damage, and using stand-up.
He subbed a multi-time national champion wrestler, Ed Ruth. He put Rory McDonald in some danger a little bit in that fight. However, this is the main names of value, name value fighters on his resume in terms of that. You have grappled with, you know, guys, Jake Shields, Brock Larson, Dennis Hallman, Okami, John Berkman, Gono, BJ, all these guys. Do you feel like even at 42, he is taking a big step up in competition on the mat and in general, and there's no tricks he can throw at you on the ground or standing that you haven't seen on the match training and in a whole long career cage fighting already?
At 42, I'm still a handful. I'm stylistically a bad matchup for everybody, and that's because I'm a thinking fighter. Like I will look at strategies to beat you and ways to beat you other than just sheer force.
There is often the theory that when you have two skilled talents at a certain discipline, they cancel out and the fight takes place in different area than expected. I remember talking to Jared Rosho last year and him telling me about purposely choosing to stay on the feet for a fight instead to go, you know, to his bread and butter of grappling because he was just having more fun that way. It cost him in that fight. Is there part of you that just wants to go out there, maybe slug it out, have some fun on the feet, or even after 42 fights, people need to know if Fitch is in the cage, an ass is going to hit the mat from grappling?
I mean, I've never gone into a fight saying I have to take this guy down to win. That's not the way I fight. I'm looking for the path of least resistance. If guys give me easy takedowns, if they give me easy, if I'm able to beat them up on the feet easily, if I'm rolling downhill like a snowball, gaining momentum, like I'm not gonna stop what I'm doing to do something else. I'm gonna do what I'm good at. I'm gonna implement my systems. I have my Fitch Smash system, and depending on how he reacts, like I'll know exactly what I need to do and when I need to do it. If that means I take him down and beat him up in the fence, that's what I'll do. If it means I fend off takedowns and I beat him up on the feet, that's what I'll have to do. I'm not rigid in how I have to win the fight.
Now, I've you talking about being the age you are, how many fights you have, how much mileage you have. But I remember seeing like an interview with Dominic Cruz when you talked about before his last fight, that title fight, that he only really wanted to fight when he's like in perfect health because he had so many issues with injuries and stuff like that. And I'm sure over a long career, you've learned a lot of ways to keep yourself as healthy as possible. I even see on your Instagram, you were using like a kind of a neck brace thing that was, helping you, that you did after practice and stuff like that. Like, what kind of stuff do you do to maintain that high level and stay healthy and stay at a extreme level of talent and skill at this point? Like, do you have to try some really out of the box things, or is it always been the status quo for a long time?
Number one thing you can do is diet. What fuel are you putting into your body? If you're putting garbage into your body doesn't have what it needs to rebuild itself, to keep itself healthy. That's number one biggest thing, and most people overlook it because we have a serious food addiction problem in this country. People will look at you nasty if you turn down a piece of chocolate cake or some other horrible fast food or whatever. Hey,
yeah,
McDonald's. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. When I go out to a nice restaurant, I don't eat like the potatoes or whatever fancy carb they made because I don't want the carbs. I just want the meat. You get funny looks too. So, I mean, that's really the biggest thing, is the discipline around what you're eating and the knowledge about what you're eating. I think there's a lot of misconceptions and false information out there about diet and nutrition. Doctors are just like politicians. They have a price. They will adjust what they're finding in their studies and whatever is, where the money goes. So I'm almost, it sounds bad, but I almost lean more towards the bro science, towards like a lot of the nutrition and health stuff too. So I'll take people that I know who I've seen and watched and see their progression and what they're doing, and try some of those things rather than going with the accredited scientific documented person who's telling me like the food pyramid's okay.
The Gracie name still has value in the sport, but it isn't at its heights like it once was. After such a long career, does getting a win over Gracie, maybe submitting a Gracie, and having that pelt on the wall of this really outstanding career mean something for you, or not really so much?
I don't think the Gracie name's faded at all. I think, they're still very respected for what they do and what their potential is as fighters. Man, there's some really good guys, and honestly, if they could bring me in as a consultant, and I could probably turn some of them into champions because my wrestling ability and how to blend that into striking and closing the distance and getting to the takedown, I think that could be a valuable lesson for them. So, I'm available for consulting. Anybody out there, not the Gracies, but ATT or Greg Jackson, anybody who wants to throw out some dough for me to come in and show them how it's done, I'm available.
And I know Damian Maia, like his second run at the title welterweight was because he started doing a lot more wrestling training. I remember talking to Neiman a couple of years ago. He wanted to mirror that. Do you feel Neiman is one of the Gracies that actually does try to institute a little bit more of that wrestling style, a little bit more of a hybrid American jiu-jitsu kind of style, or he's still close to his core values as a Gracie and jiu-jitsu?
His wrestling and takedowns approach is similar to Maia's. Because they're both long. They're both big, strong guys. They don't look necessarily that big and strong, but they are. And they're able to punch to clinch, and they get those long arms around you. They look for the trips, and they're very successful with it. I will say, though, it's not necessarily the wrestling skill that matters. It's the ability to blend striking and wrestling together so that there's no line. You can't see the line. It's so blurred. You don't know if he's throwing a 3-punch combination or he's throwing one punch into the single leg. It's smokes and mirrors. You don't know where he's going. And I feel like there's a huge disconnect between that and a lot of guys. You mentioned Ed Ruth before, one of Neiman's former opponents, one of my training partners. He hasn't 100% figured it out, and I think that's why he lost those fights with Amosov and Neiman, is because he's still not really there. I was working with him the other day, kind of showing like where my attacks are, how I'm approaching the wrestling, and he had never really seen or heard anybody look at it the way I was telling him. So when you're trying, it's not about, I know jiu-jitsu, I know wrestling, I know Muay Thai, and then doing each one separately at the same time. You have to take the pieces together and blend them into MMA. But a lot of guys don't do that. They keep everything in compartments. And you can even watch them fight, and you can see when they shift into the next compartment. Like when the guy wants to take a takedown, you see his body shift, you see his levels change, you see him start to look for the takedown. That's not a good thing. You need to blend and blur the lines.
While Douglas Lima is busy attempting to become a champ, there's some interesting possibilities as his next potential opponent at welterweight. A case can be made for Lorenz Larkin, despite having lost to Lima already. Yaroslav Amosov is another strong candidate for the top spot, and then there is you. You went to a draw with the former champion Rory. I talked to Lima after that fight. He said he thought you won that fight. Do you feel a win over Gracie puts you at the top of the contender list? With a win, would you want to fight with Amosov or Larkin in a title eliminator be something, you prefer? Or do you want something a little bit more fun at this point? Maybe you want to get like a guy like MVP that has a lot of focus on him and show him a wrestling clinic.
Yeah, if this was an actual sport, I say it's a pseudo sport. If this was an actual sport, then we would all have rankings that were, not just per promotion. We'd have actual rankings. The rankings would mean something. And me winning this fight should put me into a number one contender position. Even if it didn't, I'd at least have a number or somewhere knowing where my rank was. Other people would know where the rank was. Everybody would know who would probably get the next title shot rather than it being, a circus show. So, if it were a sport, I should get the next shot, or they should at least see the numbers of everybody else, and I should know who I have to beat next to get the title shot. But it's not like that. The fights are real, but the structure of the sport is pro wrestling. So it's all just about entertainment at the end of the day, and I'm tired of fighting it. 42, I've been fighting it a long time. So whatever. So anybody who's making arguments about, oh, well, you should fight this guy because he's got this record and whatever. I don't care. If it doesn't sell seats or tickets and it's not interesting to me financially, then whatever. I'm going to make the same amount of money fighting nobody that sucks as I'm going to fight the best guy in the world. So what's the point of me treating it like a sport if nobody else is?
Right.
So after this fight, if I feel so inclined to fight again after, winning this fight, if I feel like fighting again, if I feel like it's going to be a fun thing to do, hopefully it'll be for a title shot or it'll be for something that's interesting. So that would have to be somebody who's got a name that's interesting, or they're going to pay me to fight somebody who nobody knows.
Yeah.
Pay me my money, pay me my worth. Because if you're not treating it like a sport and nobody really cares if it's a sport, if everybody's okay with it being pro wrestling, and then, I'm going to Ric Flair it. Woo!
Do you feel like you're not getting paid enough?
Cobra Kai. You've been watching Cobra Kai?
No, I have not. I've heard about it, but I haven't watched it yet.
I got the muscle shirt. I'm wearing my jean shorts. Right?
Do you feel like you're not being paid enough? Is that a Bellator thing? Is just that overall sport thing?
It's an overall sport thing. UFC has a monopoly, and they put a glass ceiling over earning. The top guys in the world are making 60% less than they should.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very conservative estimate. So, you got guys like Daniel Cormier fighting for $1 to $3 million. They should be making guaranteed 10, 15, 20. The money's there, just the UFC keeps it for themselves. They buy yachts. Okay, WME is paying for Harvey Weinstein's lawyers to get him off of rape. right? That's what's going on. So until those guys are willing to step up and fight for the money being stolen from them, like we're all kind of stuck in this position. So it's like you have to make the decision. Is it worth brain damage and being poor to keep doing it, or you do something else?
To end this, I wanted to ask about something I hope comes in the near future, and that is regarding your ukulele exploits often seen on your podcast. Now, I think I speak for the world when I say we all need to get a Jon Fitch Plays the Hits album. Like you doing renditions on ukulele of hits like from Megan Thee Stallion, DaBaby, Billie Eilish. Like when are we going to get that, John? We all need it in this 2020.
I've been kind of doing that. I've been kind of playing around with if I could put 10 songs that I could do covers of. I thought that would be fun to do. Just
yes,
free album or something. Maybe someday. I would need some help, professional help. But it would be a fun thing. It's funny. It's a funny thing that I think we could do. Maybe I keep practicing, and then if I keep practicing the same songs I know, that could be a lot of fun. I'm having fun with that and playing, and that's even something I've thought about. Doing on stage, like a small coffee shop or something, just to because I'm all about like doing things you're terrified of.